Hello and welcome to Greenbytes Wednesdays. Greenbytes Wednesdays is a podcast series where we facilitate critical conversations and steer consciousness when it comes to understanding the impact of our digital footprint across Nigeria's technology ecosystem. We hope that with this advanced knowledge, we can introduce you to some tools, trends, and best practices that can enhance your knowledge about digital sustainability. Are you curious about climate change? Are you a tech enthusiast or a climate entrepreneur? Come on board and learn on this episode as we get on with every conversation of the Greenbytes Wednesday podcast series. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, funded by the UK government through the Digital Access Program. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote and I am glad to be your host. Welcome on board. Hello and welcome to Greenbytes Wednesday. This is a series of podcasts where we have critical conversations. I will try to see that these conversations can steer within you, the listener, some consciousness when it comes to the digital landscape, the digital ecosystem, if you like. We also share with you some tools, some trends when it comes to best practices in Nigeria. And we hope that all of this put together can help you make better decisions when it comes to how you engage with, digitization, as well as collectively make progress. Because if we are being honest, Nigeria still has a lot to do when it comes to advancing in digital landscape. And that's pretty much what we do on this series of conversations. Feel free to check out other episodes that we've recorded. It's on everywhere you find podcasts. You also can find it on YouTube, SoundCloud, on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is you find podcasts. Just look for Greenbytes Wednesday and you can find it there. Greenbytes Wednesday is also a part of the Scale for Net Zero project, and Scale is Smart Climate Awareness Learning and Empowerment Program. Thanks to the UK government for funding and making it possible for us to bring this episode, this series. We're really, really grateful today. On this podcast today, I am very privileged to have Segun Ogunwale. I'll give a little bit of his profile in a bit, but the topic we'll be talking about the best practices when it comes to IT sustainability, and that's information technology. So most times we think, okay, IT is all about cloud and data, but we miss out on the sustainability component of it. Not many people even know what are best practices that have been taken in other parts of the world, even here in Nigeria. What can we learn from? How can we improve in the ways we engage with information technology and the sustainability components therein? So Segun leads building, or you need Bridgia, if I could. Is that how you call it?
Bridgia,
yes. So Segun is the one who calls the shot at Bridgia. His work is around digital innovation, and he's a firm believer in the role of Africa's potential. He's a firm believer in Africa's potential, I should say, when it comes to the roles that this continent can play in adding to the global knowledge economy out there. He's also hoping that his work can build a global talent powerhouse where the future of work can be understood and the place of Africa, the place of Nigeria, can have a very strong foothold. Before now, he co-founded Community Digital, which is an information service provider and is for built environment industry. But interestingly, I knew Segun from his time as an advisor to the EU. He served very recently as one of the advisors for the EU Youth Sounding Board, and we spoke a little bit about the work he does at Bridgia, but even very much so around making platforms available for Nigerian contents, Nigeria, especially the educational sector. However, today it's going to be a little bit of mix between that, the work it does with Bridgia, but also on a broader scale. We'll be looking at the IT sustainability. What are the best practices? But let me turn to him at this point and say, welcome to Greenbytes Wednesdays, Segun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shay, for that introduction. I'm excited to be at Greenbytes Wednesdays. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. So thank you so much for having me.
It's indeed our pleasure. Tell us a little bit about, your work. I also know that, or I should say that we are very honored to have you. I know that your work, your course has been featured on the World Economic Forum, on the University World News, Africa Report, a very huge platform. So for us, it's also a real honor to have you here and to have these conversations. But let's start a little bit with the work you do and Bridgia. Okay, tell us about that.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Bridgia essentially stands for bridging the gap between industry and academia. So, our universities in Africa, quite a lot of potential for higher institutions, two roles in terms of training talent for the world of work, and in terms of also providing research that is useful, to the industry and to the society at large. So, what Bridgia essentially does today is to support universities in ensuring that they develop talent for for the workforce in general, to what we call career services. So today, what I've done at Bridgia is to create a digital platform through which a lot of our partner institutions can actually deliver career services to their students to ensure that they are well prepared for the world of work. But beyond that also, we've had opportunities to work with research centers of these schools to see how we can also transition some of this research that is limited to the desk also to what we call industry actionable research. So that's what we do at Bridgia today.
Okay, industry actionable research. So that means research that can build industries.
Yeah, that's a way.
Direct the action.
That's a way to put it. So what we see so much happen in our universities also Sub-Saharan Africa is that there's a lot of research that goes on and they end up on the shelf. So we at Bridgia then look at it at top on to say, looking at these transitions. So what I talk about talent transition or research transition, how do you make it more possible for those research work to be accessible in terms of being able to support the institutions to ensure that these publications go to the right audience, especially within the industry, and whereby you can then say there's a company that is interested in this research work, that is interested in picking it up, or this information provides an information requirement to somebody really working in that space. So that's something we work around at Bridgia.
Let me put you on the spot before we get into the conversation itself. Would you say Bridgia is a sustainable enterprise?
Interesting question. Sustainability has different, perspectives, right? I talk about environmental sustainability, I talk about financial sustainability. I would say that we try our best to be as sustainable as possible. So let me give you an example in terms of environmental sustainability. From day one, we've been a remote first company in terms of how we work. So I can say logistically, we have less appropriate an environment compared to what traditional organizations could have done, that X5 would have done, right? We've been a digital first organization, like a remote first company. Yeah, so that's one. Financial sustainability, I think we are approaching that point whereby, essentially to simplify it, we are making more money than we are spending, right? So, yeah, I think from this perspective, we're trying our best to be.
Okay, interesting. So, and it's good that we start the conversation this way, because this conversation is pretty much going to focus on the best practices when it comes to IT sustainability. But let's start with a little bit of introduction. If you had to introduce the concept of the industrial sector, give us an outlook. What does the IT sector look like in Nigeria for your own lens?
Very interesting one. So when we look at the IT sector, in Nigeria, I think it's a sector that has only leap and bounds. The IT sector is a very broad one. There are different, components within that sector, or what you call industry. So let's say it's the IT sector, and within that sector there are industries. See, the story for these different industries have not been the same. So let me give you an example. Telecoms has a big goal. As a player in the IT industry. You also look at the application of IT in other industries like financial services. Today, Nigeria is one of the leading fintech hubs in Africa, and even a significant player in the global stage also when it comes to, financial technology. But when we talk about industries like probably semiconductors, hardware, innovation, we've not come to play. We've not really played that much in that space, right? So when it comes to applied information technology, when it comes to telecoms, but when it comes to software development also, we've seen a great boom of talent coming from Nigeria and making impact across the world. So it's been a big story, but I think overall, the IT industry has been one of the brightest spots in terms of performance, in terms of potentials for Nigeria as a whole.
I see. And where we then put it side by side with the concept of environmental sustainability, one of the things that comes to the fore is digital waste. You can't shy away from that. Okay, we want to build masks, we want to build hardware, we want to develop software, we want to build cooling systems, and all of this is different value chain in the IT space. And at some point, it will be okay. We don't need this anymore. What happens to it? How would you connect the concept of digital waste as we approach it in Nigeria and the IT sector?
Okay. So I think we have to take a very broad view to this, right? We must start from the positives and then to say waste is more consequence. I would even say negative, right? I mean, to just say this is resulting from the positive. So I like to look at the IT sector from 3 stages. There's a stage you call digitization. That's number 1. There's a second stage you call digitalization. That's number 2. And the third stage that we call digital transformation. And let me explain my relationship with that. Yeah, that's I'm really doing that. So digitization says, let's make this digital. So let me give you an example. You run a financial institution. You provide low spread savings. So currently you have a lot of paper-based operations. So digitization says, once we have these paper records collected, we need to digitize this. Remember, we span this. That's digitization at work. The paper is still there. What you only done is that you have scanned that paper and now you have that as a digital record. That's digitalization at work. But digitalization goes a bit further. Digitalization then says, why do I even make paper in the first place? Why can't I just provide a link to a portal whereby all the information that the customer has provided through paper is provided through that portal, such that in that interaction, in that report collection, I'm not even using paper at all. That's digitalization as a stage. But when you enter the stage of digital transformation then talks about why do I even need to collect that record again in the first place? And I collect to an API through probably NIA links whereby I can just access that data in real time, such that not only am I not using paper, I'm also not wasting the customer time, right? So that's the relationship that needs to happen. So most times when IT is the same from a digitalization perspective, digital waste as a consequence would always be more magnified. So I'm not saying that the other thing is eliminate digital waste completely. But even when we stop at digitization, there would always be digital waste. So at the end of the day, there will be outdated printers, there will be outdated computers. There will be paper. Paper is a significant waste also. Even though they say it's not digital per se, but it's a lot of digital processes that leads to paper as a waste. So it's we would say the relationship is digital waste. It's a byproduct, right, of digitization and digitalization processes, and maybe to a minimum level digital transformation as a whole. So digital waste is a consequence that results from the IT industry's attempt to drive changes across different industries. And I say drive because like in the case of the Nigerian IT industry, we have seen the IT industry transform more industries than even growth in the core IT sector itself. So an example, like I said earlier, is the financial services space. I also see IT in e-commerce. I also see logistics, you see transportation with what Uber has done and all these processes also. So that's the relationship. The digital waste itself is a byproduct of the IT industry attempt to digitalize, and to some bits also digital transformation of specific industries and sectors.
Lovely. So as you think about this theme and building off of what you said, I sort of want us to shift to the aspect of the inefficiencies that we see. So some people argue that we are inefficient because we do not use digital approach to businesses or to what we do. Other people will argue that it is this digital inventions that is improving inefficiency. Where do you stand, or how do you weigh both sides?
Yeah, very good question. And I think it depends. And let me put it this way. So I remember that you see, when it comes to processes, I think processes itself, you must think about efficiency even before digitization or digitalization or digital transformation. To say what is the essence of this process itself. So let me give you an experience. Around 5-6 years ago, I was privileged to work as a consultant, organize a consulting firm, and we were working with the state government in Nigeria to digitalize their procurement process. So procurement offices in government is one of the offices that generate a lot of papers. They are bidding for contracts, every day that's to look papers, and there's a lot of paper generated, there's a lot of reports and things like that. So what we were trying to do was to develop I was to implement an e-procurement system that utilizes that process. But this is the point I'm trying to make. During the requirement gathering phase, we realized that even though we were implementing an e-procurement system, a lot of stakeholders in government still wanted us to replicate the same paper-based process, just that this time around they are just digital records. So they still want to collect those bits as paper bits, but just this time around, once they have those records, somebody can then upload at the office. So what you're only seeing IT do is IT is only amplifying that inefficiency. It's not changing anything. Until you then come to the phase of saying these things paper doesn't even need to come at all in the first place. Then that's when you can now feel you're really part of IT. So it depends on how you implement it. Most processes always have some sort of inefficiencies in themselves. The question then is, can you use IT implementation to eliminate those inefficiencies, or you want to even use it to amplify that in the inefficiency? So when you see an approach whereby you're just digitalizing and you have not entered that phase of data transformation, there's a high likelihood that IT will likely amplify the inefficiency in that sector. Another example, sorry for talk about the public space again. The experience of Nigerians with BVA, NIA. At some point you had a BVA data collected, we had an NIA data collected, and it was a case of you need to repeat those processes. Why can't you just integrate that? So when the internal process itself is not thought out to be efficient, there's a likelihood that when you have IT on it, IT will not change anything. It may amplify the inefficiencies. But when you think around it again, to say, should we even do this process in the first place? Why are we here in the first place? Why do we need this data? Why are we collecting these records? And you are bold enough to make those reforms, then it's a high likelihood that IT would eliminate a lot of these inefficiencies.
I see. Yes. How about yours? Because I also think there's the role of skills also, skill sets. Because with new IT approach, there's also, laxity in terms of skills, thinking, how do I do this? How do I do this? What then? How can we sort of improve? This is what I mean. These things are changing every now and then. How can we sort of build a system that Nigerians are also like catching up with the flow as quick as it comes and become more efficient in how they engage with innovations of the IT space?
Yeah, very good question. So I think that's that's the place of capacity development, right? In terms of training programs to ensure that you're not just implementing technologies, but people understand them and then they can actually operate them. But when you look at the Nigerian population broadly, don't forget that this is a country whereby the majority of people are less than 30 years old. That's the truth. Even though that demographic will not necessarily translate to who you have working in the enterprise and who you have working in the government. So my point being that people working in government are like people that but trust me, capacity development programs work whereby you tell people that this is what is our brand, and let us do some training, and then you do training and do your training, and then you train as retrain as possible. And what that does also is that you provide you opportunities for upskilling, right? So what that is that, so the first point I'm trying to make is that this knowledge really does appear, in people's heads. You have to think about training, right? And then you have to have your plan in terms of how do you want to engage people, how do you want to keep people. And the opportunity that IT investment brings is that once it is there, then people have the opportunity to learn on the job. That means you don't expect them to become experts on day one. You made the right investment, you've told them how this works, you've demonstrated, they've seen how it works. Then even among them, you are going to find digital champions, people that are the regular guys and know them that they're familiar to, who have become so good with these things, and then they can then learn. So training and skill gaps is not a barrier. In fact, it's an opportunity for development, it's an opportunity for upskilling. And the more you have these things change over time, the more we're likely to see, people also close these skill gaps. And lastly, with the recent advancement in AI, I am very largely optimistic, and I will tell you why. With large language models today, that means interfaces can be complex, complicated, and then you have an average somebody working in government and enterprise just asking questions, just interacting with systems that do. So the skill gap is not a barrier per se; it's even an opportunity for upskilling. That's my take on that.
I see. Quite interesting. So maybe talking in line with the opportunity, imagine you were in a room with, say, 500, if that's too much, with 50 organizations that have been thinking about, improving the ways they do things, becoming more sustainable with their IT section, or reducing their digital waste, if we put it that way. What will be some bullet point steps or, very key points that you present to them to adopt to see that they can use, digital waste?
Okay, so for an organization trying to reduce digital waste, I think it starts from the obvious. And when we say the obvious in the sense that there's a joke we make in the IT industry that what we call server rooms for many organizations, especially when you see 10 plus year old organizations, sometimes it just goes through. So the hardware waste, whatever has become redundant, you have to let go of it. And just letting go of it does not essentially mean that you throw that to the bin. You have to assess which of them are still useful, which of them can still work, and then probably as part of your ESG or CSR responsibility, you can make a donation to where those things are still needed. There are still several schools today that if they can have a desktop order that is fully working, that can serve, that can go a long way. So that's that about that. That's the goal base in terms of looking at what is redundant that you can see and that you can let go of. Well, that is just an aspect to it. The second aspect to it also is that there are so many software that organizations probably have licenses of, subscriptions to, that are no longer as useful as they used to be. There's a need to do an assessment again. So at that we also need to do in terms of doing an audit of these software systems to say, what is it that we still pay for? So that's also because financial sustainability is part of it. So there's a need for an assessment, there's a need for an audit in terms of then trying to then see how these things, can then be of value somewhere else. And I think also going forward, because IT, it's an evolving field. One needs to think of sustainability right from procurement. It's a framework that a lot of suppliers and OEMs are adopted, which is called the extended producer responsibility, which means as early as when you're buying this hardware, there's some commitment for the producer to see through the life cycle of how you're going to use, how you're going to be disposed, and things like that. Because e-waste, it's a big challenge on its own. So that's where I start from. So IT organizations generally, for them to be sustainable in their IT, they have to think about it from procurement, right? In terms of saying how sustainable can this be, and that's where I'm so much excited about the cloud, because cloud presents a lot of opportunities. Today, you need less hardware compared to before because you can put a lot of infrastructure in the cloud. Although there are still some regulations around it in terms of policy, information or data stays in the cloud.
Security,
financing also. But trust me, there are so many groups in that industry. So even in terms of adjusting to regulation, a lot of these providers are also finding workaround in terms of collocating, their hardware in a region. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So that's start from procurement in terms of once you are prepared, you have to think of sustainability right from that perspective. And why I'm also so much excited about the cloud is that unlike traditional hardware procurement, whereby you are anticipating future dates and you are making provisions for that, provisions which sometimes may be redundant for a while until you actually need that resource. With cloud computing, and you can auto scale. That means I pay for what I need today, and as my demand grows, the resources I'm accessing also grows along that line. So it starts from thinking around how you procure and what you intend to use. And like I said, the lowest hanging fruit is always what is visible. Those desktops, those terminals that we've not used in a while, not necessarily spoiled. Why can we give them a second life so that they are useful elsewhere? So that's my whole take to it.
Interesting. So just to reiterate the points you made, if I put it in three key points. First is to let go of redundant hardware. We talked about assessing the need in terms of software or other forms of facilities and deciding what exactly is useful, what is not, and leveraging the cloud computing system. Because I'm thinking, 5 years ago we used flash drives for everything. But now I say, hey, it's on this link, or find it on this.
Let me airdrop it to you.
Yeah, exactly. So for those of you who do not really understand the concept of cloud computing hardware, maybe that makes sense to you now. And even these cloud systems has also improved.
Yeah.
You probably remember, if you probably will, maybe the Gen Zs will not, that there was a time we used infrared and we put the phones, the bears are connected to each other. Exactly. And after that, it was Bluetooth, and it had to be within a space. Exactly. and now it's airdrop that's even faster, and now there are like WeTransfer links that can, be in the cloud for quite a while. So it's quite a lot of, innovations that is happening, and one way or the other we're catching up, and a whole lot more will happen in a few years to come. I've been speaking with Segun Ogunwale. He is the CEO.
Yeah, I would like to use the word team lead instead, but that's finance.
He is the team lead at Bridgia, and we'll be speaking on the topic best practices for IT sustainability. We've sort of narrowed it here in Nigeria, but also drawing from best practices across the world. Thank you for staying through and for listening, and I hope that you've really been challenged or you've gained some insights from the conversation I've been having with Segun Ogunwale. I just want to say that away from this podcast, there's also going to be a digital waste compliance course that is being developed as part of the Scale for Net Zero program. So please feel free to check it out on the website and engage with it, learn more, get some certifications if you want, and share with people in your network. We've been discussing best practices in IT sustainability. We would also delve a little bit into digital enterprises and what it looks like. If I put on to you here, Segun, and ask you, how would you sort of evaluate, or what would be your outlook of digital enterprises in Nigeria as it is today?
Interesting question.
Maybe I should. This was what I thought. Would you say Bridgia is like a digital enterprise, or what's the digital enterprise? Just give us an outlook of that.
Okay, good. So, digital enterprise broadly means an organization that leverages digital tools and platforms, for their operations, whether to be more efficient or probably to use solely drive that operation. And when you look at that definition of leveraging digital tools or platforms, a number of organizations, so let me say a lot of organizations fit into that definition. But what would then be a better way to look at it is or perhaps maybe digital first enterprises or digitally led enterprises. So let me give them two examples. Walmart, the retailer, or even ShopRite, right? Trust me, those guys use a lot of digital tools. You may call them brick and mortar stores, but it's a lot of digital in terms of, the terminals where you're making those transactions, even their supply chain management, their information systems. So, but we call them brick and mortar stores because it's a physical shop you go to. Yes, this is a digital enterprise because, there's even an interesting story that one of the first private satellites by a company, that's a signed government, was even launched by Walmart as a company, right? For them to be able to communicate across their different stores. But when you come to digital first enterprises, it's about an example like what Amazon has done in e-commerce, whereby from day one, they're thinking of an online quarter where everybody can go from around the world and find 2 million products. So that's where that is. So that's, digital enterprise, which a lot of organizations fit into. Then when we then bring it down to digital first enterprises, or digitally led enterprises, that's where the definitions them, becomes most streamlined.
I see. Interesting. As a young man, I would, maybe my parents would have, if I told them maybe 10 years ago that I want to lead a digital enterprise, they would have looked at me and say, you want to be a Yahoo? But with this explanation, it makes a lot of sense that even the traditional businesses as we think of them are also very digitally inclined or digital led, as you put it. But if you had to then sort of look into the future, what do you think the future outlook will look like? From where we stand right now, and if you could just imagine and paint the future of digital enterprises and the
predicting the future can be very hard, right? So I will try to anticipate rather than
yes,
right? So I think digital transformation has come to stay, and we're going to see more of it, right? But these topics can be very dicey, and I will tell you why. So going by what we have seen, let's learn from history before we even look into the future. So what we say digital, I think a lot of operations will be digitally driven for a lot of organizations, right? In terms of how do you acquire your customers, how do you manage your suppliers, and we're seeing that increasingly. But what I'm not so certain about is about that final customer interaction. And I will give you an example. So we see a case of the Amazon example I shared earlier, whereby, it started as an e-commerce store. But at some point, it decided to buy a company called Whole Foods because of its brick and mortar network, right? So In terms of the back-end operations, a lot of things will become, digitalized in terms of will be digitally transformed, in terms of how they are coordinated, how products are acquired, how customer information is managed. But when it comes to customer interaction, we would likely see some kind of mixed or hybrid model whereby some organizations will still benefit from having on-site presence whereby their customers or their citizens can go into to have those interactions. So that's my kind of way to look at it, and I see the more balanced.
I see. Now, outside of the scope of this conversation, but I'm just going to throw it in. Just make you think about how improved digital approach to doing things really affects. I don't want to be too pessimistic, so I'm just going to link it to affect our human interaction, our person-to-person interaction. I mean, we can be wowed by the fact that I can do so many things at the click of a button and I don't need to do that else. But what does this mean for what makes us human, these connections that we have?
I think that's the big question all of us, we know there's a concern there, but we're not exactly sure what how that concern will pan out, right? And would also go back to the data in the sense that when you look at it to say, what you and I call man-to-man interaction, it's a way you and I want it because of belong to generation. Are we sure that's also how the next generation would actually want it? So she and I can see, you've been talking about the phone for the past 10 months. Let's catch up somewhere in Abuja. Would that catch-up culture still be prevalent in the next generation? That I don't know, right? So it's a valid concern there. But how that concern will likely pan out, I don't want to be exactly predict how that is going. But the concern is genuine. The need for human-to-human interaction. We are seeing a generation spending a lot of time on digital devices. But how that will exactly turn out for the next generation, I think we still need to wait and see.
Yeah, there's so many things we need to wait and see. I was speaking with a colleague earlier, and she said, "Oh, I'm grateful that I am born at this time. That I imagine what it was like, 50, 100 years ago, where people were moving on horses and how it was brutal." And I looked at her and I said to her, well, maybe 50 years down the line, your children will ask you, do you mean you have to drive 500 kilometers?
Exactly.
Can't you teleport or fly?
Yeah. That must have been stressful.
Exactly. Oh, that was the cool thing. Yeah. So there's so much that the future holds that we really cannot, like you said, we can only anticipate, we cannot predict. But one thing that I think I just would want you to keep in mind is that no matter how far we go with advancements with digital approach, we should not lose touch of this human connection. It's really it really makes a lot of difference.
Just to support that point, humans are social beings. It's a feature. It's not a problem. It's not something that you do because we have a need for it. We are made to be social. So there's a place for that human connection. And the more we can present that, I think the more we can present what essentially makes us human.
Absolutely. And on that note, I should also say that one of the episodes on this Greenbytes Wednesdays series talks about digital detox, where we talked a lot about digital wellness and this human connection, even as we advance digitization, or as we put it, digital transformation. But as we call it a wrap, what should be the key takeaways for the average guy who's been listening to this conversation?
Yeah, so I think for me, like I said, quite a number of things, probably one or two. A process that is not efficient in itself. IT will not make it more efficient. You have to think about processes from the why. Why are we doing this in the first place? When you have good answers to that and you think through that, IT can help either amplify that inefficiency or it can eliminate that inefficiency. So that's one about it. Number two also is that in terms of digital transformation of organizations, that's digitally driven, that's digitally led. But all forms of organization, none will be able to resist some digital transformation of sort. Every organization, every individual will be digitally impacted. Those are the two biggest takeaways from me. And like I said earlier, also skill gaps, they are not necessarily a barrier, but there are opportunities that can be harnessed in terms of capacity development also, in order to close that. And e-waste also. E-waste is not until you get to the point of waste. As you are buying that new phone, as you are buying that new software, you have to think of it as a life cycle. At some point, how do I get to go with this one? It's no longer needed. So those are the key takeaways for me.
Very, very punchy takeaways, if you ask me. And I think we'll call it a wrap here. I do hope that this conversation, yes, it is very clearly, maybe very brief, but I also say very in-depth. We've sort of looked at what it is right now, and it could provide some sort of roadmap when it comes to looking into the future, how to approach things better when it comes to IT sustainability, or for you who wants to run a digital enterprise, how to think in a more green terms, in more resilience terms, how to do things differently, not just for the sake of the environment, but like we said, even for financial sustainability and other forms of sustainability that you may think around. That's going to be the size of this package of Greenbytes Wednesday. I'm so grateful to the team lead of Bridgia, Segun Ogunwale, who has joined me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sheyi. I mean, I've been delighted having this conversation. Thank you so much.
It is our pleasure indeed. And to you for listening, for watching, thanks indeed. Feel free to check out other episodes of Greenbytes Wednesday on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcast, wherever it is you find podcasts, you'll definitely find Greenbytes Wednesday there. Big thanks to the team, Jibola, Ayo, Wonderful, and everyone else that has made it possible for us to bring this episode and many other episodes. Lastly, I want to say thank you to the UK government for funding and making it possible for us to really fill up this educational or this knowledge gap when it comes to the digital space in Nigeria. That's it for now. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote, and it's been a pleasure hosting this conversation. Until the next time, continue taking actions that makes you more responsible. Bye for now. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Greenbytes Wednesday. This podcast is brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, thanks to funding from the UK government through the Digital Access Program. Have you learned something new? Please share with your network, share with your friends, as I look forward to hosting you on yet another episode of Greenbytes Wednesday next week. Follow us on our social media platforms, check out our courses, test yourself, see how much you know, how much you're learning when it comes to digital and sustainability ecosystem in Nigeria. And I should remind you that as you balance your knowledge of digital ecosystem, also remember to stay committed to a shared and sustainable planet. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. Bye for now.